Hey everybody, welcome to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry podcast series. I'm your host, Dave Presida, and thank you for joining us today. I say this often. In this series, we do a lot of interviews with high-level people who are inspiring with their stories and how they made it in this industry. Today is no exception. I'm super excited today to have as our guest a gentleman who is passionate about making buildings safer. And how do you do that? Well, every time you walk into a high rise or into a hotel or even on a cruise ship, you don't see all the systems that are in place to help keep you safe if there's a fire in the next room or the floor below. May sound trivial to some, but it is a huge industry, and the more the technology advances, the more they advance with it. Our guest today is Charbel Tagher. He's the co-founder and president of STI Specified Technologies, Inc., and they're one of the leading manufacturers of Firestop. And when I say as an owner, you're going to hear a story about somebody who came from very little and did a whole lot with it through building a culture. And if you're a middle manager, you're going to see how treating people the right way makes a difference. And if you're just starting in business, I don't know what your next hurdle is, but when you listen to his story, you're going to be able to advance if you want to. Charbel, welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Wonderful to be with you.
Now, I just gave you a real big, wind up, so I hope this is great. It will be. Anyway, let's talk about STI and its place in the industry so we give people a backdrop of what STI does.
So, STI started 32 years ago from scratch, two people, my co-founder Jim Stoll and myself. And we both had worked in larger companies. I learned about fire stopping when I was working at Thomas & Betts and as a vice president of a division, and Jim was working for me as an engineer. He had invented many of the products that we were selling at the time, but fire stopping was really a teeny weeny thing in that division. I thought it was interesting because it was different. So I took an interest in it, and he and I developed a strategy. We applied this strategy and it worked very well. And then things happened, changes in management and all that. I moved on and that line was sold to another company. And a couple of years later, Jim came to see me and he said, "Hey, we worked very well together. I'm not happy where I am. Can we build this? Can we do something together?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Let's look at that." And our whole idea was that we were not happy with the way the industry was dealing with fire stopping. The products were not very safe. They were solvent-based. You had to use a mask. You had to use gloves. The technology was really not terribly advanced and clean. And we decided we were going to change that. We were going to change the game in time, and we were going to provide much safer, much better, much easier, much higher performance products. And we were also going to be the guys that people want to do business with as opposed to being forced to do business with. So that was the fundamental game plan. We were going to be the alternative.
And this was back in the early 90s.
This is back in 1990. 32 years ago.
So who was in the business then? Like what companies?
So in those days, our competition were some of the best companies in the world. 3M, GE. GE in those days was the most respected company in the world. Hard to believe it today, but it was.
Yep.
Dow Corning. Hilti was dabbling in this a little bit. And then we had a number of other smaller players, IPC, Rector Seal, and a few others, Nelson. Today, 32 years later, we're one of the top 2 players in the United States and one of the probably top 4 in the world, something like that.
And we're going to get to that evolution because it doesn't just happen.
No, it doesn't.
There's a lot of things that happen, but we're going to get to STI and what makes you different, but let's talk about your background as a person. You were born in Egypt.
I was born in Cairo, Egypt, where my parents of Lebanese origin lived and built a business. That business was nationalized in 1961. Meaning that the Egyptian government, which was under significant Russian influence in these days, Russia was still a communist country, they took the factories away. And then a year later, we were sequestered, which means they took everything away. Now your clothes, your furniture, your home, your car, your money in the bank, everything now belongs to the state and you're a ward of the state. And a few years later, they kicked us out and said, okay, now go back to your country.
So
I
hope the audience understands what you just said, because your life was your parents' life was turned upside down.
Totally. It was very hard for them.
One day they have a business, the next day the government owns it.
Yeah.
And they had no say.
Yes, no say. And luckily, the one thing they had was a very, very deep faith. And that helped them a lot. And truly, I could see the hand of God in a lot of moments in our family's history.
How old were you then?
I was 13 when, I was in 61. I was 9.
But you remember?
I faintly remember all this. I remember going from one apartment to another because we didn't have our own apartment anymore. So we would be staying with different families every few months. It was very hard, very, very hard.
Lessons learned as a child to see that your parents, because my father went through many things that impacted me. Lessons learned by you about the way your parents handled that.
Yes.
What were they? I mean.
So the first lesson, once I understood, is I was very grateful for how my parents protected me from all this. And I had a normal childhood. It was not a luxurious one the way it would have been, but in many ways, it turned out to be to my advantage. I probably would have been a very spoiled kid. That's for one.
Interesting.
For two, it made me think through a lot of things and realize how courageous my parents were, but also that I needed to build on the rock. And so when I was somewhere, maybe 16, 17, I decided that I had to come to America. I have to find a way to come to America, make my way here, and then basically make my life here. And so I developed a game plan, and my game plan was to get my bachelor's from the American University of Beirut, then find a way to get an MBA here, and then I wanted to at some point do my own business, but I knew I had a lot to learn. So I thought consulting would be a good place to be for a few years. You learn a lot about companies, how they operate, the mindset of the CEO and the executive suite. You learn about how to analyze, how to look at different things. And then after that, I would run something. And then after that, I would do my own. And that is basically what I did.
So you had a plan.
I had a plan.
And you had no idea Firestop didn't mean anything to you at the time. It could have been anything.
I had no idea exactly how that plan would develop, where it would be, other than it would be in America. And along the way, many times I got offered, both at McKinsey and at TNB, to go back to Europe. And I talked to my wife about it, and she said, well, what your plan is to stay in America. How does that fit? And I said, it doesn't. So she said, well, then don't do it.
There you go.
There we go.
So we always talk about the why. And the why for you, the thing that got you through, and you developed a plan. You didn't know where you're going to end up.
No.
Not that you've ended anywhere, because you haven't, but you wanted to own a business. You wanted to have a meaningful career. So you set yourself up in consulting and manufacturing, and to prepare you for what you didn't know you were going to get into.
Exactly.
So that brings you to Jim Stahl Sr.
Yes.
All right, and that's where we started. So now, Firestop. That's the business.
So I thought the Firestop was very interesting. First, there really were, it was the very early days of Firestop. There were very few players in it. the one big player in it was 3M. It's a great company, 3M, but you have to realize this was a teeny-weeny division of a huge company.
I know him well.
By the way, for any entrepreneur, I strongly recommend that you fight against giants. Giants lose focus so quickly, so often. Little guys like me,
nimble,
they are the ones you have to fear. So,
before you leave that is so true, because when companies, it seems like when companies get big, they get slow. You know, you talk to a person who works in a big company, well, I can't get anything done because it takes forever to go from my boss to his boss to their boss.
It's true.
To make change.
It's true.
But not so much with an
well,
entrepreneurial
this is where all my experience with McKinsey was so helpful, because I was working with Fortune 500 companies, and I mean big companies, and I would say even Fortune maybe 50 companies, and I could see the amount of bureaucracy. I would never have wanted to work for any of these companies, just because there's so much bureaucracy in there. And so when people were telling me, aren't you afraid of competing against GE, against 3M, against Dow? They have so much money. And I'd say, that's how you're looking at it, but I know how it works inside.
Right.
And you think they have a lot of money, and they do, but you have so many people competing for that money.
Yeah.
You are lucky if you get a fraction of what you hope to get. And boy, are you going to have to fight for this forever. Not us. We got properly capitalized. We made sure that we generated enough profits to be self-sustaining. And by the way, here's a little dictum that some of the folks watching may enjoy. You may even want to write it down. Sales are vanity. Profits are sanity. Cash is reality. And if you follow this dictum, a lot of the hard decisions will become much simpler.
Say that again.
Sales are vanity. Profits are sanity. Cash is reality.
Now, did you learn that at Wharton, or is that part of Wharton?
So I learned it partly at Wharton. Yeah. The 1 hour that impacted me the most in my 2 years at Wharton was a course in financial accounting, where a company was making money hand over fist and went bankrupt. And the teacher told us, okay, now I'm gonna teach you how to understand cash flow and the role of cash flow, and how this company was recording profits that didn't exist. And so once you learn that, because they were having sales that were very good,
vanity,
but they weren't
profit.
They weren't getting the money,
yeah.
You know?
Well,
and so
great lesson.
So they were giving bonuses, paying taxes, paying dividends on money they didn't have.
Right. Well, that's like you say, well, that, if you're not in it, you say, well, how can that happen? It happens all the time.
All the time.
When you have percentage of completion contracting, you can forecast things that aren't real, make money, pay taxes on it, and at the end of the day, not achieve those goals.
Absolutely.
Right. So
absolutely.
we talk about starting a business.
And interestingly, this company that we're talking about, this example they use, they were in the construction.
Yeah.
And they were forecasting revenues that never...
So easy to do.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do, and one of the toughest things, as you know, in the construction business, if you're in it, is cash flow. Cash flow is king, right? Yeah. You said it in a different way, but I think the fact that you prepared yourself, right?
I did.
Sometimes when you get money in, you want to spend it. You think you invested or whatever. Cash. I mean, you can build up cash without making money, and you can go out of business and make money if you're not collecting your cash.
Totally.
So, for all you business people out there, whether you're a CFO or you're just starting or you're a business owner, you know how critical cash flow is. You understood that from the beginning, and that helped you.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, the 3Ms of the world, and we think they're great companies, they're super capitalized.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people, as you say, fighting for that dollar.
So I lived it, and I understood it from the course. I understood it from what I had learned. but I really lived it after Thomas and Betts, where I worked with some folks who were buying companies, trying to turn them around, and making a lot of mistakes. And cash became a big problem.
So you saw what cash can do firsthand.
I saw that. And
Luckily, it wasn't your cash.
No, it wasn't my cash. I was so happy they didn't let me invest in that company.
Right. But at the same time, that was a valuable experience, part of your growth. Now, I didn't have that ability to look into a company that failed. And I had a company that failed once, and you brush yourself off, you get up, you keep going. You had the luxury, maybe that's not the right word, but you at least had the ability to get some insight on somebody else's dime.
Yes.
So
yes.
So you're well capitalized. You're in the beginning of what is a new and growing industry. You have a good partner who complements you. Talk about how Jim complemented
I had a tremendous partner. I mean, from a technical point of view, he was unbelievable. And we say he was because unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. But Jim was one of the smartest people I've worked with. Very creative, very innovative. And what I really liked about our partnership is we disagreed on a lot of things, and we would hash it out. And it was always for the good of the company. We'd have those heated discussions, and people were thinking, oh, these guys are going to split, this is the end. It wasn't. We were just working things out. And, in my background as a consultant, I was used to this kind of stuff, arguing. Challenging, arguing, exactly,
right.
To come to the right solution. And so with Jim, we did a lot of that, and it helped us a lot along the way. So, if you can have partners or colleagues with whom you can have honest conversations, it goes a long way. And as a matter of fact, part of our leadership values at STI is honest conversations. It's the number one value that we have. Because without that, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road,
people are telling
hiding
you what
problems.
they think you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, when I say complement each other, and we talk about this when you're starting a business, you want to if you're going to bring on a partner that can do what you don't do.
Exactly.
Instead of duplicating you, don't get a partner for money because you can get that elsewhere. It costs you too much to get out of it. But it sounds like you started on the right track.
We did. And so I learned a lot from him about fire stopping and the technology and the testing and truly the business as fire stopping.
Well, the structural part, the technical part, you must have been the strategist, right? How do we get this to market?
So we did a lot of that together.
Yep.
I was more the business strategist, the financial strategist, sales and all that stuff. But we complemented each other. We talked a lot about everything. I remember him struggling one time with a technical issue that I knew very little about, but I knew how to ask questions. And so within 2 hours, we had figured it out just by forcing the thinking. This is another thing which you learn as a consultant.
What I'm hearing is your business, and perhaps many successful businesses they grow through dialogue, right?
Yes.
Through honest dialogue.
No question.
It's same with a relationship, a friendship, a marriage.
Totally.
If you want to kick the can down the road because you don't want to face things, you just do it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best idea,
no.
Especially in business. Anyway, how has your background, because we're going to get an STI in a second, how has your background molded you to become who you are and to create the kind of culture that you have at STI, a culture of openness, if you will, commitment. And you hear that, it sounds cliche. I'm going to tell you right now, folks, I personally did business with STI long before I knew you. And the things you're going to hear today, and pretty much I can guarantee you that they're real, right? STI is different. But just talk about the culture in general and how your background kind of suited you for building a culture that you have today.
Well, for one, I come from the Middle East. I know when you read the papers, you think everybody's killing each other. But actually, the people of the Middle East are very warm people. They are very human in many ways. They're very welcoming. And the personal touch matters far more than just the business aspects. So this is one of the gifts I got from my upbringing. And it was reinforced along the way by my first boss when I was at McKinsey, who taught me that you can get, with a nice shake hand and a smile, you can get a lot of things that you cannot get with money. And so when we started STI, there were a number of things we wanted to do. By the way, aside from wanting to change the industry and move it forward, we also wanted to create a company that people loved, whether they would be the customers or whether they would be our employees. And I know we've succeeded there because very, very few people leave STI. And we have a lot of people who've been with us now. We're 32 years old, many who have been with us 25 years, 30 years, 10 years, 20 years, and all that. So we have a lot of long tenures at STI. It's a huge competitive advantage. The relationships we have built, the experience people have, the loyalty to the company, and all this, and a certain way of treating our customers and our own people. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of times where somebody had an illness and we supported them throughout, one of them 2 years. That person became one of our best PRs. We didn't do it for that. We just did it because it was right.
Because it was right. And everybody sees that. I can tell you that I don't buy product from you anymore. I haven't bought product from you in 15 years.
Oh,
whatever.
I'm sad to hear that. I thought.
But what I do, and to this day, yesterday, as a matter of fact, I talked to 2 of your salespeople because I was preparing for this. And they couldn't have been more forthcoming. They were proud. That not only were they proud of the company, but they still saw me, they didn't look at me as a buyer. They looked at me with that relationship in mind because I felt that.
Yeah.
And whether I'm buying product or not, that's just the way they are. So, congratulations on developing that whole culture. We're gonna dive into STI. What is Firestop? Why is STI different, and a host of other things you're going to want to stick around for. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Charbel in a quick minute. See you soon. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Presida, President of Adequate Construction Services, LLC, and I would love to talk to you business owners about your business. I bet you most of you that are listening have at least 75% of your personal equity tied up in the business. If you care about options on how to get that money out, that's what I want to talk to you about because I've been through it. I was a business owner and I sold my business. Didn't even know there was a buyer, but there are plenty of them. There has never been a better time than now to sell your business. So maybe you haven't even thought about it. The last deal I did, I talked to him, I said, "Do you ever consider selling your business?" He goes, "Didn't know I could." Well, yes, you can. There's a lot of options. I would urge you to go to my website, adicorp.com, adicorp.com, my last name spelled backwards, and go to Season 1 Podcast, Episode 2, Sales and Acquisitions. It's going to answer a lot of questions you might have. Yes, we talk about how you value your company, but that's only one piece, right? We're talking about why you would sell, who would buy it, common concerns about you, your staff, your clients, your legacy, all important things to discuss. So go and listen to that podcast and then contact me. Either call me or leave a message on my contact page on the website and I will get back to you because, as I said when I started, I look forward to talking to you about your business between now and then. Stay safe and stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry. We're with Charbel Tagher, who is, again, the co-founder and president, among many other things, of STI. When I introduced you today, we talked about, like I mentioned, life safety.
Yes.
STI is built around life safety. So explain what life safety means to you, and then we'll get into what STI actually does.
Okay. So fire stopping, which is the only thing we do, is a very key part of life safety. And life safety is comprised basically of two aspects: active fire protection and passive fire protection. Active fire protection are sprinklers, extinguisher, things that you have to activate. And passive fire protection is things that are in place and are supposed to work no matter what. So fire stopping is one of those. Anytime you, let me start by saying any building is basically a bunch of boxes. And those boxes are supposed to contain the fire and the smoke and gases for a period of time. It could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Typically it's 2 hours. If you think of let's say a hospital, every floor in a hospital is fire rated. It's supposed to be good for at least 2 hours, to contain the fire for at least 2 hours. Every wall, some of them are fire rated, some of them are not. So the combination of the fire rated walls and floors makes a box. These boxes are really made out of commodities: cement, sheetrock, cinder blocks, etc. Concrete. However, man cannot leave a good thing alone, so we're going to make holes in there because we need to run utilities, we need to run services, data, plumbing for water, HVAC for air conditioning and heat, electricity, in the case of a hospital, medical gases, etc. So you're going to have a lot of things going through those fire-rated walls and floors. In fact, next time you go into a hospital, you should realize that in the corridors, you have a whole bunch of things going in that corridor to the different rooms and compartments of the hospital. This is where fire stopping comes in. All this needs to be sealed so that in the event of the fire, that fire is contained in the compartment where it originated. Sealing it is not so easy. Some of these penetrants are just going to stay there and be happy, just warm up, if they're steel or copper. But some of them, if they're plastic, are going to melt away. If they melt away, you need a product that is going to expand. We call it intumescent. It's going to crush the penetrant, and it's going to totally close the hole.
So under heat, it expands.
Under heat, it's going to expand. So you also have very small holes. You have very large holes. All these require different treatments. Because we're in the life safety business, you cannot just give your product and say, "Oh, Mr. Contractor, use this." It has to be UL listed or some other lab. UL is the most best known.
Underwriters Laboratory.
Underwriters Laboratories.
So what you're saying is, if I'm on the third floor in a room and there's a fire on the second floor, it's going to keep smoke, hot gases, and flame out of that room above and give me 2 hours, if it's a 2-hour rated system, to get out of the building.
Correct. It's going to give you time to get out and give time for the firemen to get in. That's the purpose.
And that's passive fire protection. So in this room,
yes.
Okay, that's a rated wall behind you, I'm sure. And if there's a penetration that goes through there is some kind of sealant around that penetration that's been tested by UL. It's a system.
Let's hope there is.
Let's hope there is. I got to tell you that I've been through the evolution of this as a contractor, and I remember back in the day in New York City, I did a 55-story high-rise, and at the time we used insulation that's now defunct and glue instead of mechanically fastened pins, unfaced fire safing with the wrong orientation, right? And it was state of the art at the time.
Yes.
At the time.
Yes.
So today, right, some 30 years later, because of companies like you who have tested systems, designers now understand how buildings move,
Yes.
how fire moves and smoke and hot gases move, and how to protect people from that.
Yes. Well, I'll make a point on that if you want, that you can relate to. Sometime around 97, 96, 97, architects were telling us at SCI, guys, you're doing a great job with all these little holes, but I have a big problem. I have big holes in this building for which I have no solution. The entire top of wall area and the entire area around the building, which as you know is called the curtain wall. They said, we need solutions for that. Well, we've always thought of ourselves as a solutions company. So we figured, okay, we're gonna go out and develop a solution for curtain wall. So we were getting ready to test, to copy, the first and only test that existed at the time. Then we realized this is not a curtain wall. There's no window there. A curtain wall requires a window. This is a concrete slab to a concrete wall. So we called UL and we said, where's the window? They said, there is no window. And we said, therefore that is not a curtain wall.
Correct.
They said, no, that is not a curtain wall. That's a joint.
It's a construction joint.
That's a construction joint. So then we figured, okay, no problem. We'll develop one. And it took a lot of work to develop one because not too many people wanted to cooperate there. They didn't have any reason to want to, they could get away with whatever was there at the time. So we took it upon ourselves to do it. Took a lot of work, a lot of money, but we did get a solution. So the first solution that we had was not the most optimal one, but it was the first legitimate one. So we went to a number of curtain wall designers and said, we need to talk to you. And they said, what do you want to talk about? And we said, what system are you using now? He said, well, we're using this system. I don't want to name it. Let's use XYZ. I said, well, let's look at it together. So we looked at it together and says, so I told the guy, the architect, he was a very well-known architect at the time, where's your window? So he says, well, he calls his collaborator, says, where's the window? He says, gee, I don't know, we've assumed there's a window. And said, we called UL, there is no window. This is a major disaster because they've been using now the system all over.
Right.
So I said, okay, but I got good news for you. I do have a system for you with a window. It's not what you want, but if you help me, we can improve on it. But now we know what it takes to do the job right. And this is how we developed the whole curtain wall. We started, developing systems for the whole curtain wall business, where today we have the most systems of any company in the world. We had a similar situation with hospitals. We started working with hospitals, and everybody was going to hospitals and telling them, oh, the Joint Commission is going to come and inspect you, and so you got to use my products to plug the holes. And after a while, hospitals said enough is enough, because every time we plug the hole, somebody else comes in and makes another hole. And so, we're constantly chasing our tail. We're throwing good money after bad. So we said, you're right, you need a different solution. So we hired some of the best experts in the field of managing hospitals. And we hired them for 2 years. And we said, teach us the business. What are the issues that hospitals have in day-to-day management and construction management, all that. 2 years later, we came up with a program that had nothing to do with selling products. It was just a program for how you get your arms around your fire-rated walls and floors. Today, that program is the standard of the industry. And it includes software, it includes trainings, it includes a lot of things. So this is the kind of stuff we do and like to do, not just selling product.
So in its simplest
We're
form,
about solutions, we're not about products.
hospitals are probably the most difficult
By far the most difficult.
for all the penetrations.
But we love them because they're not just the most complex, so we can shine, but they're and the most demanding, but also the most inspected.
Sure.
So they really want to do it right.
Yeah. Well, the difference too is you have people that live there 24/7.
Yes.
It's occupied totally like an apartment.
Yeah.
So fire stopping, the art of fire stopping has evolved tremendously from the days when I used to do it. And USG, United States Gypsum, had a product with a foil face safing on top. There was no extension compression. There was nothing.
True.
Right? But until companies like yours said, no, we need to, this building moves, so we're going to do 100 or 200 compression extension tests and see if now you have elastomeric products. I think it was great, not only because it was the right thing for life safety, but it made it more specialized, right? It became an industry in itself.
Exactly.
Contractors migrated to that industry because no longer could the drywall guy do it. No longer did the curtain wall guy want to do it. They wanted specialists to do it, which is exactly what we did. So we, when I say guys like me, benefited from the advancement of Firestop through companies like yours.
Yeah.
So what's an engineering judgment?
Okay. So construction constantly evolves, and there's constantly new materials, new situations. It's very hard to have tests for everything. As it is, we have 1,600 tests at this stage, maybe even more. And we're still not covering all the situations. But we're close enough on many of them. So a contractor like you or somebody else in the field runs into a situation and the inspector says, no, I don't accept your system. You need to get me an engineering judgment. And the engineering judgment is something very specific that reflects the exact condition that's in the field. But it is not a tested system, but it is based on tests that you already have.
Based on similar findings.
Exactly.
And that's a big deal. I say for you contractors out there, EJs, we call them, happen all the time because every curtain wall, not everyone, but most of them are custom.
Yeah.
And they have features like...
Exactly.
So you have to adjust.
And it's not just curtain wall, it's everything else.
Everything.
Do you know how many EJs we do a year?
Tell me.
We do in excess of 10,000 EJs a year.
That's a lot of EJs.
That's a lot. It's also a great strength because, as you know, we have a tremendous tech service department. They don't like to be called tech service, they like to be called engineering services, which it is, engineering services. And so we have constant back and forth with people out in the field. So for 10,000 EJs, you're going to have maybe 20, 30,000 interactions, not counting the ones that don't have an EJs. So this is unbelievable customer feedback. It's tremendous.
It's unbelievable customer service too.
Yes, it is. So in addition to all, the feedback that our salespeople get, so this is a tremendous strength.
You talk about strengths.
And source of innovation, by the way.
How has disasters impacted your business? Give me a couple examples of disasters.
They have had, I hate to say it, but they have had a very good influence on the business because it has forced to strengthen the codes and strengthen the inspections. So you live not far from Philadelphia. Not too long ago, well, I don't know, maybe, 20 years ago now, maybe, they had the first First Interstate, I think, was in Philadelphia, right?
And that was young.
Yeah,
I knew the project.
right
manager.
across from the City Hall.
Yep, I know exactly.
So this really shook the industry. Before that, you had the MGM fire in Las Vegas, but we're talking, in the 80s. So I
But
think
the
80s
MGM
or
fire was caused
90s.
because of raceways for mechanical equipment that were not closed off floor to floor.
Yes.
Think about that.
So there was another big fire in Los Angeles, and I'm wondering if I can't remember the name of that building, but a lot of these fires happen during maintenance while you're soldering stuff and something goes wrong and you're using a live flame and very strong flame to do that. Something goes wrong, the building hasn't been fire stopped properly, and the fire expands and spreads in no time. This is why it's so important to do. I mean, recently, not too long ago, we had a fire on a Navy ship. Remember I can't remember the name of it, the Cousins, something like that. And same story. That it's being repaired. They have openings that haven't been closed. Something goes wrong with the soldering, and boom, the fire spreads. Those things happen a lot. So the codes have been tightened tremendously.
So through those disasters, through loss of life, loss of property, the codes have increased. The amount of scrutiny on the end product has increased. People understand how these things can get out of control. It happens every day. There was just another fire a few weeks ago in Brooklyn that took the lives of many. So sad. Talk about the Pentagon.
So the Pentagon is a very interesting story that you're familiar with, and it's lucky in many ways. The Pentagon, as everybody knows, has 5 wedges. Luckily, wedge 1 had just been upgraded and totally redone, including a lot of fire stopping. You did some of it. Just before the plane hit. It wasn't occupied yet, but it was completely redone and ready to be occupied. That's when the plane hit. Because it was, and we're lucky that it hit wedge 1.
Yes.
If it had hit one of the older wedges, the fire would have spread. But because it hit wedge 1, that had been very nicely protected, the damage was fire, smoke, gas, all the damage was contained. Even the explosions were contained within that wedge. The other 4 wedges were intact.
So by sheer luck, the plane hit the wedge that was unoccupied. But even if it were occupied, it didn't spread because of proper fire stopping.
Exactly.
That's the lesson here. Yeah. You may not even ever see it, but it should be there. Like you said, we hope it's there.
Yes. Well, most of the time you're not going to see it because it's hidden. It's behind, raised ceilings. It's behind decorations and all that. Most of the time you don't see it unless you go in one of the new funky buildings where they show you everything.
So one of the things that attracted me to STI a long time ago was the fact that, and I said, that's all they do.
Yes.
Now, there's nothing wrong with companies who decide to go in different directions. The big companies, for example, they always have to have a new product, whatever. Why have you decided to just stick with fire stopping? Because that makes you different.
It does make us different. And it takes a lot of discipline. I cannot tell you how many people, how many other companies, and how many times have come to us and said, you've built a tremendous distribution network. You could put many more things through it. Could we partner on this and that? And I've always said no. And the reason I've said no is very simple. Focus makes you better. If you don't have a plan B, if you're forced to be really good at what you do, you're going to do it. If you have options, if I give the salesman the option of selling something that is harder to sell or something that is easier to sell, guess which way they're going to go? This is how we built STI, is by focusing, by forcing people to make a living at out of what they have. And I think we built a great company that way.
So I think it's indicative of this next fact. How many tests have you run to date?
We have, like I said before, over 1,600. I'm not sure. I haven't kept count.
And each test could take up to 6 months. I mean,
It could. Some of them take a long time, some of them less. What we have done is we have invested in a furnace in our facility. So it's one of the only 2 furnaces in the world that are certified by UL. And it allows us to do a lot of things much faster than if we had to stand in line. It allows us to also test the limits of a lot of things because we obviously want to be as cost economical as we can, but we don't want to take any undue risk. You know, you could test something 10 times, fail 9 times, pass 1 time, and you have a system. I don't want that for us. I want a system that will pass every single time.
Right. So how do you leverage that with companies that need fire stopping, like a system, like a curtain wall company, right? What would your value proposition be to a big curtain wall company to come to you instead of a Hilti, who are good, but they do a million things. They might sell them, you know, fasteners and everything else and fire stop.
Yeah.
And all you do is fire stop.
Okay, here's one of the other things I learned as a consultant. When I joined McKinsey in 1976, wow, it's a long time. It was still a small company, 600 people. Everybody was a generalist. And then little by little, they developed what's now called practices. The idea being that you were gonna know enough about business, but have a very in-depth knowledge about a specific segment of business. Yeah, you would be a specialist generalist, if you want. And this is what we've done at STI. So we have a number of what we call strategic initiatives, and one of which is curtain wall. And in all due humility, I think we know more about curtain wall than a lot of people. That's certainly any other fire stopping company. That's no doubt about that. And I can tell you that, and you know it, a lot of the major players in this business call us all the time because they have issues, and by now they've realized that they need help very much upfront solving those issues so that the building is done correctly from, you know, day one, instead of having to fix problems all along. And so, you know, practice makes you better, as they say, right? And so the more we do it, and the more we partner with engineers who really know the business, and the more we learn and become good.
I know firsthand that the curtain wall companies do rely on your expertise, and I know also that it's a little simpler to get a good EJ if you have 1,600 tests. Because
There's no question.
You've got more background to
Yes.
choose from, right?
So we also have 1,600 tests can also drive you nuts.
Yeah.
So we built a lot of artificial intelligence into all this, so that our engineers can quickly find what they need and what's relevant to the situation. That also accounts for the ability to turn things over very, very quickly. Typically, we turn 96% of all the requests within 24 hours.
And again, firsthand, I can say that in my past life, that's been true, and that means so much in the construction world that moves so fast.
Yeah.
To be able to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be reactive, but sometimes you don't have 3 days.
Yeah.
You need it tomorrow. You need it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you guys are able to pull that together.
Exactly.
Before we take the next break, I want to talk a little bit about distribution, just so people understand how do you sell your product.
So we opted very early on to sell through distribution. Why did we do that? for many reasons. One reason is that for us, as a small company, early on anyhow, to be able to service our customers better, we had to have enough stock to get a job started in enough places in America. This is a big country. So most foreign companies that come here and that are used to selling direct, all of a sudden realize this is a much bigger country than I thought or that I'm used to. Luckily, we grew up with here, since I've been here and in business, I understand the value of distribution. And good distributors, and we're very lucky, we have a lot of good distributors, do a lot of good things for you. They carry stock. They're the bank for the distributor, for the contractor. Their salesmen have deep relationships, and with the better ones, they have years and years of relationships. They also have leverage because they sell a lot of other things. So Firestop can be part of the package. So the one thing we realized early on is we needed to have our own people, our own salespeople, out there in the field with the distributors.
I'm glad you said that.
Because the distributor has a zillion things to sell. But they're going to give more of their time, more of their share of mind to those who support them better. And so one of the ways we get more of their share of time is by giving them a lot of support.
You help them, because if a contractor calls them about a certain test, they're dealing with screws, they're dealing with plywood.
Right.
They're going to call you guys.
Call us.
Right. So you have, it's like almost like a triangle, because you can deal directly with the contractor, but they're going to buy it through a distributor.
Correct.
Which I think makes sense. Now, one of your major competitors doesn't do it that way.
So our major competitor goes direct, which is also, it's a good model. They do a great job at it. They leverage the rest of their offering. They also know exactly who buys what and when and how much, which we don't, because we sell through distribution. However, our distributors sell so much more and think about it, drywall. They're gonna buy sheetrock, studs, maybe screws. Let's say they don't buy the screws, okay? And all sorts of other accessories, insulation, all this stuff, okay? A decent drywaller, good sized drywaller, will buy tens of millions of this. Of my main competitor, that same contractor, you're lucky if they buy $200,000 or $300,000 of what they have. So if my distributor is well trained to leverage what they have, who's going to win?
Yep. Well, it looks like.
What's the last time you had a shortage of screws?
Right.
What's the last time you had a shortage of insulation or steel studs or sheetrock?
How about yesterday?
Right.
Exactly. So I think we have a good idea of who STI is and what STI does. So we're going to talk about some different things when we get back to technology, the future of Firestop, and so on. So again, don't go away. We'll see you in a quick minute. Hey everybody, welcome back to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry. We're here with my good friend Charbel, and I mean that sincerely. The future of Firestop, where's it going? I mean, I've seen it evolve so much. Is it going to continue to evolve, and how, if so?
Oh, it's definitely going to continue to evolve. There's a lot going on in the world of construction right now. Among other things, wood construction. You know, they want to build tall buildings made of wood. So we're going to see where that goes and how far, but it's greener that way. That requires now a whole bunch of new testing. It's a whole different approach. There's modular construction. You know, this is another area where maybe some of the fire stopping gets done in the factory. We're looking at that and at developing products specifically for that can then withstand transport, from the factory to the field.
Yes.
It never stops evolving. Plastics keep evolving. They become more and lighter, but also more brittle, more combustible. Every time I'll tell you, maybe 15 years ago, I was asking Jim Stoll, what budget do you want for R&D and testing this year? And he said, well, this year we'll put in X. I said, this is less than last year. He said, yeah, we tested everything we have to test. I said, Jim, I'm not so sure. I'll put in, just to be safe, I'll put in the same amount as last year. But we ended up spending a lot more than that.
Right.
And it never stops growing. But it's okay. It's part of the business, and
So,
it's what makes us
you
competitive.
mentioned some product changes in the future, but the way I look at it, that's going to happen, and you will evolve with it. But technology, in terms of, because you offer more than products, you offer solutions.
Yes.
Your people, your engineering people, right? Technology is it's got to be able to help them.
No
service.
question. No question.
How have you leveraged that?
So we, for many years now, we've been investing a lot in software. We started by having consultants on the outside, develop software for us. And then it would take too long, and it would have to constantly modify it. Well, we now have a group of software people, our own group, in addition to outside services we use, and we have 7 people that do nothing but develop software for us, who work for us full time.
Plus, they know how to handle the outside consultants and when to bring them in and how to manage them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, you still need outside services.
Yes.
It's constantly evolving. And today, a lot of people in construction are younger people. They're used to using their phone, their laptop, their pads, and all this, and they're looking for all this. So you have to give it to them. And to be honest, it also makes our life easier, because our job is to make the solutions easy to find and to give them all the solutions they need. And I think we're doing a good job at that. Everybody tells us, you have by far the most user-friendly website, you have the most solutions, your software is amazing. But in a world where competitors copy each other all the time, this is free enterprise. This is what makes you better.
Yeah.
I have nothing against it. In fact, I welcome it. This is how you constantly evolve and improve.
Speaking of free enterprise, you're an international manufacturer. You do business all over the world.
Correct.
Is America treated fairly overseas?
No.
Just, I know we're not supposed to talk politics, but we'll keep it as apolitical as possible. But describe how that is and how it should be.
So, people who live here and work here and don't have a lot of exposure to overseas think that the rest of the world is like us. It is not like us. This is the freest, most open economy in the world. We put so few barriers for people to come in. In return, others put all the barriers that they can think of, for not just for us, but for every other country.
Taxes?
No, taxes is the least of which.
What is it?
Codes or lack of.
Both of which can be difficult.
I mean, take Europe, for example. Europe has their own construction codes, which are very different from ours. All the testing that we have here is no good in Europe. The good thing is the testing the Europeans have is no good here. But
so it kind of works both ways in that regard.
But you do have a number of European companies that are, my main competitor is a European company that's thriving over here. But some of the smaller people cannot, because this is a very technical market that requires a lot of investment and a lot of resources. Whereas, for example, some of the European markets, pretty much anything goes. The one market which is by far the biggest and technically the best is the German market. But again, the barriers they have and the crazy stuff they have, and it takes months here to get the systems you need. It takes years there to get. People told me it take you 5 years to get what you need.
So
that's what it did.
Higher barriers to
Very
entry.
high barriers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got to talk about COVID. There's two things that happen. COVID, supply chain. How has that affected your business and the industry?
So obviously it's had a profound effect. COVID in itself has, I think everybody's kind of adapted to it. We were all scared to death in March, when all of a sudden we had lockdowns. They were supposed to last 2 weeks and they ended up lasting for the most part 1.5 to 2 years. But the construction industry continued and actually demand remained strong. What happened though in February of 2021 is the big freeze in Texas. And that totally disrupted the chemical industry. It actually disrupted the whole construction industry. Well, beyond the construction, really the entire industry in the world. So with the big freeze, the major producers of chemicals, petrochemicals, as well as many that we use in construction, such as latex, they went down for a whole month. By the time they came back online, there were shortages of people, there were shortages of other materials, there were problems with ports and trucking.
Still are.
Still have. So in our case, we keep huge inventories. And so, because if you order today, it used to be, no longer, but if you order today before 2:00, we would ship the same day or the next day, which was unique in the industry. It was another way in which we were special. So we had a lot of inventories and we were able to use a lot of that inventory through June, July, maybe August. But come September, October, we had depleted our inventories and now we were relying on production that was running through all sorts of delays and not able to replenish our inventories. So it's been hand to mouth for the last few months. And I think the whole industry has gone through that.
Hard to manage.
And so we did everything we could to help our customers. So whereas, let's say, 1.5 years ago, you would have ordered something, a quantity, and we would have shipped it all the same day. Today, if you order that quantity, we're going to ask you, how much of it do you really need this week? And if we have a good relationship with you, you'll trust us to tell us the real answer.
Right.
And we'll ship you that. And then next week, we'll do the same thing again.
Don't be a hoarder.
So you'll never run out, but we'll be able to satisfy other people too.
I remember when I worked for you for a couple of weeks way back when, and I was in Dubai. There was a shortage of a manufacturer's product, fire-stopping product, over top of safing and a slab edge. Now picture this. This was at a mall in Dubai, and the contractor did something as silly as put the safing in. Instead of putting it this way, they put it this way. And they put all kinds of sealant on top, a couple of miles worth of sealant.
Yes.
Until it was discovered that they had the safing in the wrong. Anyway, things happen. This supply chain is unprecedented. That was kind of self-inflicted. This supply chain issues are unprecedented.
It really is.
And I pray that it's getting better, because it's not good for anybody.
But I don't know I'm very worried about what's going to happen, at least in the construction industry, because costs have gone up like crazy. Studs are 3-4 times what they used to be.
400%.
Sheetrock is maybe 2 to 3 times what it used to be. Insulation also,
It's hard to get.
you're lucky. I know for a fact that if you place your order today, you'll get it in 6 months.
Right. That's
So
like unprecedented.
So all this has got to get people thinking, do I really, plus the work from home stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, anybody building a commercial building these days should be asking themselves, do I really want to build this one?
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, if you're building a hospital, a university, a headquarters or whatever, you're going to have to keep going with it. But your cost is going to go up and it's going to take longer.
So I was in the middle of several jobs when COVID hit. And the worst that happened was a couple of jobs got put off a couple of months. Things slowed down a little bit until people realized, well, we're going to go up this stairwell, and we're going to go down this, and we're going to have more areas where you can wash your hands and, those kind of things. But in general, the business has never been more robust. So we'll hope it stays that way. I guess we'll see.
It is. I mean, so far, so good. I mean, our business is booming. In spite of the shortages, last year was our best year, and by quite a bit. So, and that's in spite of the shortages.
So STI is a great story, and it's got a long way to go. What advice would you give, knowing who you are, where you came from a young engineer, right, who wants to do more? Doesn't mean he wants to be an entrepreneur. He just wants to get better. What would you say to somebody if they were sitting there, hey, and they told you their story, I'm an engineer, I've been here for 2 years, and I'm kind of stuck? What would you tell them if they wanted to move forward?
Well, I tell them what I told my kids. I said, you have a number of decisions to make for your career. One of them is, do you want to be the guy in the cubicle or the guy running the guys in the cubicle? Totally different skills. There's nothing wrong with either one.
Either one.
Nothing wrong, but they're different skills. In one case, if you're going to beat the guy in the cubicle, you're going to get better and better. You have to get better and better at what you do, because if you don't, somebody in India will get your job. If you want to be the guy running, or gal, okay, guy or gal, running the people in the cubicle, you have to learn different skills. You have to learn how to manage people. You have to learn how to get them motivated, how to supervise them, how to empower them and not be a pain in the neck all the time, how to make them want to come to work and want to work with you, as opposed to have to, because these days the have to doesn't work anymore. And you have to learn management, about strategy, about competition, about, it's a different way of thinking. You have to open up your mind to a lot of things.
But what you said earlier, you got to understand, before you make headway, you got to know where it is you want to go.
Yes.
And I think the people that don't, and they don't understand, they just don't know, and they don't have that why, they might be stuck for a little while. It doesn't mean they're going to be stuck forever.
No.
And again, it takes people with different skill sets and different goals to make the world go around.
I had a boss who was very smart and would tell me, because he knew I planned ahead, he said, I never plan ahead. I just go with the flow. Whatever comes my way, I take it. If I like it, if not, I just don't. And that works too.
Yes.
It depends on the personality. Some people, can just, go with the flow, if you want to call it, and other people need to feel a little bit of control.
The world needs both.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody, we touched on this a little earlier, what would you tell somebody starting a new business?
So starting a new business is a different story. A lot of people think that starting a business is very easy, that it's all about the idea. The idea is 10%. The execution is 90%.
Say that again.
Idea is 10%, execution is 90%. And I remember when I used to be working at TNB, one of the things they taught me is R&D is 10 to 20% of the cost. Marketing, sales and marketing are the other 80 to 90%. And I found this true over and over and over. There are so many people who have bright, amazing ideas that never go anywhere or that get stolen by others. So you have to have not just the idea, but also the ability to get it to market, to defend your position and all that. This is where we've been good. Jim had some really good ideas and insights, and I knew how to build a company.
Okay. What would you tell an owner that's been around for 20 years? What kind of advice would you give an owner if they're a little tired and a little weary of doing the same thing every day, they're thinking about expanding their business? What would you tell them?
I tell them that the first thing they need to do is get a vision. Having a vision that's exciting but realizable is very enticing. It's rejuvenating. It makes you want to go to work every day. And like somebody said, I never worked a day in my life because I enjoyed every day of it. Right. So that's very important.
But you said two things: a vision, but an attainable one.
An attainable one.
Right, and that's important. So if you're an owner out there and you feel like you're in a rut.
Yeah, I mean, if you think you're going to be Amazon tomorrow, or even in 30 years, forget it. Look around. There's one Amazon. Right. There's one Google. There is one Facebook.
But you know what I say?
But there's thousands of smaller and mid-sized companies that are doing incredibly well.
If you're better today than you were yesterday, if you learn today more than you knew yesterday, you're on the right track. It feels good. Yeah. I don't care if you're making $100,000 a year, or 10 or 50 or 5 million. That feeling is can't put a price on it.
Totally. So there's a lot of things here, for personal satisfaction. My kids ask me, how'd you become happy in life? I say it's really not very difficult. You have to decide what your goal is. And if you know what your goal is, like they say, careful what you wish for because you're going to get it.
You're probably going to get it.
Once you reach your goal, you have to be happy that you've reached it and recognize all that went into it. Then you can change your goal if you want.
Adjust.
But it's important to be able to do that. Know what you want, and once you have it, understand that you have it, accept that you have it, and not constantly be looking at others and saying, oh, look what he did and look what he did.
Well, it's interesting you said it, because you have a lot of life in you at your young, spry age here. You have a lot of life in you. And some people would say, well, he's doing really good. No wonder he's happy. No, it's just the opposite, right? You're happy first. You develop the thick skin, you develop the work ethic, you develop all those things, and you become successful, whatever that means, to each person. That precedes success.
It does precede. And you also have to be grateful for what you have. We take so many things for granted, and we don't realize. I mean, good health every day, that's a gift.
Yeah.
Having a happy family, that's a gift. Having wonderful colleagues, that's a gift. None of it happens on its own. You have to work it. But it's so easy to let little things get in the way and make big deals out of them. But when you keep perspective, it changes everything.
And when you have the end in mind, you get through a lot of that crap that a lot of people get hung up on. Let me ask you this. Success is very subjective.
It is.
So how would you define it?
Well, part of success is, like you said, it's subjective. It's achieving what you have set out to achieve. But I think a big part of success is feeling that you have contributed. I think that's the biggest part of success. Contributed to improve your industry, contributed to the lives of the people who, are in your company. For example, one of my personal goals has been that I want people who come to work for us to feel stretched, to feel that they learn everything, and to feel that they've never been forced to do or even asked to do anything that is not right, that they don't want to do. And I want them at the end of the day to go back home and be a better spouse, parent, whatever, and certainly not have had frustrations that they take out on their loved ones. To me, that is part of success.
So your influence on others is a big part of how you measure what you do every day.
No question.
That's cool. We're going to end it with this. Describe in an article that I found, it might have been 2 years ago, it's called A Company with a Soul. Describe that.
Well, I've given you part of it already.
Yes, you have.
I think a lot of companies are out there just to make money. Obviously, we want to make money because we need to make money to be able to do all this. But money in itself is not our goal. Money, the way we look at it, is the result of a job well done. So we're a company with a soul in the sense that first and foremost, we want to take care of the people who work for us, because if we take good care of them, they will take good care of our customers. That's for one. For two, we realize that every human being has, whether they're our customers, whether they're our vendors, whether there are our colleagues, there's a lot more to them than just business. There's a whole spiritual side to a person, and you can define this any way you want. It's emotional, it's a way of thinking, it's an attitude, it's beliefs, but it's not a number. It's not, oh, this guy is worth so much to me every month. It's not, I pay this guy so much and so he's worth less than this other guy that I pay more. Or,
sure.
Okay. So I think that when you deal with people like this, through the range of contacts you have, you come across as somebody who cares, as a company that cares, and we are a company that cares. And so this whole thing about a company with a soul, we're not the ones who invented this. It's our customers who told us, you are a company with a soul. And then we stopped and said, wow, this is deep. And we asked them, why? And they told us what I told you.
That's the ultimate compliment, isn't it?
And it's quite a compliment. And truly, it's exactly what Jim and I wanted to achieve. And so you asked about success. Okay, this is one of the aspects of success.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. You have been good for the industry. You've been a good friend. I haven't seen you in probably 12 years, but it was like I saw you yesterday. So again, can't thank you enough. You can find out all you want about STI, the company, by going to STIFirestop.com. And how can they get a hold of you?
Very easy. My email is ctagher, CTAGHER, at STIFirestop.com. And I want to thank you guys for listening. I hope we haven't bored you to death.
I can tell you that we haven't. So again, listen, thanks everybody for joining us. And until we meet again next week, stay safe and stay tuned. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, ADICORP.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Procida, hit connect and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.